The 90s and 2000s era band Typo Negative would mix themes of romance, drugs, depression, and death, and would be credited with bringing goth rock to the masses. Today, let's take a look at the history of the band. It was prior to the formation of Typo Negative that frontman Peter Steele started his musical career in the late 70s, playing in a variety of groups named Hot Ice and Northern Lights. By late 1979, he would play in a band called Fallout, where he met future Typo Negative keyboardist Josh Silver. But the heavier sounds of punk, which were popular for the past several years, were now being replaced with disco and new wave, and Fallout would eventually split. Silver would start a new wave group called Original Sin, while Steele would start up the metal group Carnivore. Carnivore would sign to a small label named Roadrunner Records, who put out a handful of albums before the group eventually dissolved. It was following the end of Carnivore that Steele initially focused on working for the municipal government, but life had other plans. Typo Negative drummer Sal Abrascato, who worked with Steele at a blacksmith shop years earlier, had heard about Carnivore's breakup and wanted to talk to his old friend about working on some new music, telling Louder Sound. His father answered the door and led me down, and there's Peter sitting in bed watching TV, having just cut all his hair off. He just took the New York Police Department test. He didn't want to play music anymore. I asked him if he wanted to hang out and jam, have some fun. He nods, saying he's always wanted to have a band with electronica, keyboards, samples, and things like that. I'm like, yeah, cool, man. Just saying anything so I could play with this guy. Steele would reconnect with longtime friend Josh Silver and add guitarist Kenny Hickey and drummer Johnny Kelly. Their new outfit would go through several monikers, including Sub-Zero, New Minority, and Repulsion, before landing on the name Typo Negative. The group's first demo, which was under the name Repulsion, were mostly leftover Carnivore tracks that would turn into the group's first release, the doom and thrash influenced Slow, Deep, and Hard, which came out in 1991. Steele was still under contract with Roadrunner Records and wasn't happy with the label and how they handled his past releases with Carnivore, but the label loved the sound of Steele's new band and wanted to put their demo out. A lot of Typo Negative's music would be written from Steele's point of view, growing up as someone who didn't have a lot of luck with women, was emotionally fragile, and vulnerable to demons, with the imposing frontman telling the LA Times in 1997, "I've gotten my heart broken so many times that I've lost count. Anytime I've been involved with someone I've cared about, I've suffocated them by caring too much. That's probably why I lost them." The band's second release would be a faux live recording, which came out the following year with a hostile audience. But it would be 1993's Bloody Kisses, which put the band on a lot of people's radars and brought their goth sound to the forefront. Also helping was the renewed interest in vampires thanks to the 1994 film Interview with the Vampire. Despite pop culture helping the band, they didn't really like being pigeonholed as a goth act, with Steele telling the LA Times, "A goth image has been cast upon us by the media because they have to label us something. I guess people think we're vampires. I mean, we may suck, but it's not blood. Seriously, I don't like being called goth because there are more elements to our music than that label suggests. If you're gonna call us something, I prefer junk rock or gothadelic. I think we make music that dead hippies might like." Despite being labeled as goth rock, the band's influences were pretty wide-ranging, with Steele telling the Times, "I've always liked really heavy rock music like Black Sabbath and Iron Butterfly, yet at the same time, who doesn't like the Beatles and the Stones? Then as I got older, I was into more droning, dreamy sounds of bands like the Cocteau Twins, My Bloody Valentine, and Dead Can Dance. I guess you could say I like music that's soft on the outside, but with a strong, solid foundation. With Typo Negative, we like to sugarcoat our bricks." Bloody Kisses would produce two of the band's biggest hits, including Black Number 1 and Christian Woman, the later of which would be inspired by Steele's relationship with a goth, with him admitting to Revolver magazine that he came up with the lyrics while he was hauling 40 cubic yards of human waste when he was working for New York's Parks Department. Despite the band's newfound success, they were also weary of what came next. While the initial vision was to keep their tours close to New York and for the members to become local legends in and around the city, their label wanted them to quit their day jobs or get time off and tour the country. Monty Corner, who was the A&R man for Roadrunner Records, would tell Louder Sound, "Peter was content with being a local hero and playing locally. He liked the security of a job and life, so he really wasn't ready to give up all that on a whim." In a way, that contributed to Sal leaving the band. Sal wanted to go in fully and tour nationally, which the guys weren't really ready to do. When he left, Josh sent a load of pizzas to the Roadrunner offices. It was his way of telling us he thought the band were through. Despite the reservations, the band would hit the road, spending nearly a year and a half on tour, getting opening slots for Nine Inch Nails and Mötley Crüe. It was following the success of Bloody Kisses the band turned their attention to their follow-up, October Rust, which came out in 1996. Steele wanted to focus the band's sound on appealing more to women, with Kenny Hickey revealing to author John Wiederhorn. Peter saw how many women he was getting after 1993's Bloody Kisses and the song Black No. 1, so he decided to design the band towards getting more chicks. October Rust was intentionally sensual just to get the high heels in the door. It was a pimp record. The album was notable for also featuring more ballads and being a departure from their doom and goth metal sound, while also featuring a cover of the Neil Young song Cinnamon Girl. Neil Young hadn't heard the cover or even of Type O Negative until he appeared on Howard Stern's radio show on Sirius XM, and it was on that episode he finally heard the cover and praised it. Apart from being frustrated with their goth label, the band also disliked what critics had to say about their cover songs, with Steele telling the LA Times, "We're not into doing parodies. I'm just taking something I like, I chew it up and spit it out, and then I see how it looks and sounds. It's not a challenge to me to replicate a song note for note. I'd much rather put our own style on it by taking a light song and turning it into something heavier." The album cycle for October Rust would prove to be the beginning of the end for Steele. He would admit that 1997 became the first time he started using hard drugs, as up until this point he had been heavily into staying healthy and keeping fit, even on the road. Drummer Johnny Kelly would reveal in the book Louder Than Hell how himself and Steele were drug buddies, and after each show would get off stage to get their fix. It was those demons along with Steele's depression that he would battle for the next decade and a half of his life. October Rust would prove to be successful and would go gold. It was around the same time as the album's release that the band, in a calculated move, saw their frontman pose for Playgirl, with Steele telling the LA Times, "When I was offered the photo session, I got together with the guys in the band and asked them, what could this do for us? We figured it might gain us some new fans if they liked what they saw. I have no regrets, no guts, no glory. Only I hope that if we get asked to model again, I can keep my clothes on and get paid more money." In 1999, the band would release what was arguably their darkest record to date, called World Coming Down. The album would be largely inspired by Steele's battle with mental illness, family deaths, and drug abuse, with Kelly telling Louder Sound, "Peter's personal life bled into that record. Peter wasn't in top form. Drugs have started to get into the way of things. It's so powerful, but also very depressing. Even worse, he really didn't want to play those songs live. Like, why do I want to be reminded of this again?" Cynicism also played an important role on the album, with Hickey telling Revolver, "There was a disappointment of not realizing the dream after October Rust. Around this time, the whole Napster shit happened. Before that, people were still throwing stupid amounts of money around. We were part of the last generation of bands that could get millions of dollars in publishing advances for a record. That ended with October Rust. It was becoming harder for bands like us. I think that disappointment, that despondency really comes off in World Coming Down." The group's sixth and final record with Roadrunner, Life Is Killing Me, would be put out in 2003 and dealt with themes of cynicism and mental health. By this point in time, Roadrunner Records had grown significantly, and Type O Negative weren't a top priority anymore. The band soon parted ways by the middle of the decade, and Steele's personal life only got darker. While still abusing drugs, the frontman would spend nearly a month in Rikers Island prison after assaulting a man over a woman. In 2006, Steele's mother would pass away, with him telling MK Ultra magazine, looking back at losing his mom, saying, "That was a real jail sentence for me." In what was foreshadowing of the band's future, it was on May 13, 2005 that Type O Negative's frontman and bassist Peter Steele had died. At least that's what people thought. While no official announcement was made by the band, the group's website posted a tombstone that read, "Peter Steele, free at last, 1962 to 2005. The news turned out to be a hoax, and the tombstone was meant to represent the band's newfound freedom from Roadrunner Records and their new relationship with SPV Records. SPV would put out the group's final album, 2007's Dead Again, which would chart at number 27, the highest position of their career. Between 2007 and 2010, it seemed like Steele was in a better place in his life, but years of drug abuse took their toll on him, with the frontman revealing in an interview, "I developed heart problems, I developed liver problems, I never had a stroke, never had a heart attack." In 2010, his life would be cut short when he passed away due to what was reported as an aortic aneurysm, but was later found to be blood poisoning. Kenny Hickey reflected on his death to Loudwire, saying, "Who knows if he died from all the drugs over the years or something else. He was diagnosed with this condition years and years ago, but if you take care of yourself and you do the right stuff, it's something you can live with for quite a while. There's plenty of 90-year-olds running around with it." Following his death, the band split up, opting not to replace their frontman, and tributes would pour in. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to the like button and subscribe. We'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.